Hello, Upward Coaches. It's Matthew again. Sorry for the long layoff in between these videos. As you probably noticed in my last one, I was coming to you from my hotel room in Orlando. I was busy traveling, had been gone for the first 2 weeks of practice, and now I'm back. Some of you have probably seen me at the bridge over the last 2 weeks. I've been coordinating the practices there, and had a great time connecting with some of you guys, getting caught up and seeing how the teams are doing. Hope you guys had a great first weekend of games. I got to enjoy 3 of my boys playing. One of them's on a first, second grade team, another's on the third, fourth, and then we have one on fifth, sixth. And so it was just fun getting to see them with their teammates and see them play and enjoy competing. And so yeah, hopefully you guys had some good first experiences of game situations, and something that your team can learn from and grow. And yeah, so just to recap a bit, we've been going over the last 3 weeks have been on the theme of honor. And the Upward Manual defines honor as showing the value that you see in someone. And maybe a different way of saying that would be like, the honor is the outward expression of the inward value that you have for a person. So, to put it in practical terms, I show my wife honor by the way that I keep up with the house, or how I help and serve around the house. I show how much value I have for her and for my family. I honor them in that way. Honor can be expressed verbally, or it can be expressed through action. We've been seeing that in these Bible portions that we've been going through. So we started off with the story of Jesus and the wedding feast. And he tells this story as he's at the Pharisee's house, as he's looking around and he's seeing all these guests at the Pharisee's house trying to fight over the best seats at the table. And he tells them, when you're invited to a wedding feast, don't always take the best seat, because the one who invited you might come to you and say, actually, I have that prepared for someone else. And then you, being humiliated, will have to go and take the lowest seat. Rather, start with the lowest seat, so that when the host sees you there, he'll say, friend, no, rather come up to this better seat here. So, the idea of seeking to humble yourself, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Rather, humble yourself when you're coming into a situation or into a place. Take the lowest place, the lowest seat. Don't assume that position of honor. And then we went into, last week was the Good Samaritan. And honestly, the Good Samaritan story, it's one of my favorite parables that Jesus told. And what's interesting about the story is that everyone always focuses on the Samaritan himself, but the point wasn't the Samaritan. The point was, who is my neighbor? And as Jesus telling this story, he actually answers that question the wrong way around, backwards. He makes it out that the truth is, it's not about the person in need. It's not the outward person that's a neighbor. It's, who am I being a neighbor to? So he tells this story about 3 men who come across a man that's been beaten and he's been left for dead on this road between Jerusalem and Jericho. And it's clear from Jesus' story that this man who was beaten and left for dead is a Jew. And so the first two people who come along, they're Jews. It's a priest and it's a Levite. These are his own kin, his own kind, his own people. If you put it in basketball terms, they're on his own team. And the one sees him from a distance and passes by. The other comes close and sees him close and still passes by. It takes someone from the other team. It takes someone who should have and rightfully could have despised him and hated him, to have compassion and see this person in need and step out and do something. The point Jesus was making was that it's not about, we're not above serving anyone. There's no one that we're too good for. There's no one that's so far beneath us that we can't serve them, that we can't be a neighbor to them. We actually had this discussion with the kids and our team on Monday night, and one of the things that came out was, just this idea that there's no one that's beneath me. There's no one that I'm too good to serve. And so then that transitioned into this story of this week that is in John. And it's the story of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. And it's John chapter 13, starting in verse 2. And it starts off by saying that Judas had already had in his heart, the devil had already put it in his heart to betray Jesus. And Jesus, knowing this, knowing that he had received all power and that he had come from heaven and he was getting ready to go back to heaven, that in that place of knowledge, now he steps away from the meal that they're having. They're in the midst of their Passover meal, and he stops in the middle of the meal, which in and of itself would be strange. Why would you pause in the middle of the meal? And he pauses, and he takes off his cloak, and he takes off his outer garments, and he wraps a towel around himself, and he comes and he starts to wash the disciples' feet. And as he's going around, he comes to Peter, and Peter says to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus says, "Yes, Peter." And Peter says, No, far be it. You're never going to wash my feet. And Jesus says to him, "Peter, you don't understand what I'm doing, but in a little while you will. And if I don't do this for you, you have no part of me." And so Peter responds, "Well, then, Lord, not just my feet, but my head and my whole body." And Jesus says, that's okay, Peter. One who's been bathed doesn't need to be bathed again. He just needs his feet washed. And so he proceeds to wash their feet. And as he finishes, he says, "Now, do you see what I've done? You call me Lord and Master, and rightfully so. But now, as your Lord and Master, I've just set an example of what you should be doing for one another. If I, your Lord and Master, wash your feet, then you also should do likewise, washing one another's feet." In other words, in that culture, in that time, there wasn't a lowlier job you could take. So I asked the kids at our practice, I want you to think about what is the lowest job you can think of that you have at home to do. Some of them came up with washing the toilets. Some of them came up with washing dishes. Some of them came up with cleaning their room. It was kind of fun to listen to some of the things that they came up with as what they thought was low jobs. But see, in Middle Eastern culture, feet are absolutely disgusting. I've had the privilege of actually going and living in Israel for a little while I was doing some training. And while I was there, we had some friends and I were going down into Jerusalem, and we needed to get a taxi. And so we were waiting on the side of the road for this taxi to arrive, and one of the guys noticed that he had got something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. So he kind of just bent over, not really thinking, and turned his foot over so that he could get this piece of paper or whatever it was and remove it from his shoe. And right at that moment, right as he was going to do that, a taxi drove by. And the moment the taxi driver saw him lifting the bottom of his foot towards the taxi, he got extremely upset and made a very ugly gesture towards us, and then drove off. And we were sitting there wondering what in the world happened. We were clueless as to why the taxi driver responded this way. And what we found out later was that in Middle Eastern culture, feet are so disgusting and dishonorable that you don't even show the bottom of your feet to another person, let alone wash them. Now, so think about this image of Jesus. He's sitting with his disciples. They're in the middle of this meal, and suddenly he stops and he begins to wash their feet. Now, this was at a time when, there weren't cars, there weren't, buses. There wasn't an easy way of transport. You walked everywhere. And there were constantly animals, livestock, donkeys, goats, sheep, cows, and they're dropping stuff everywhere on these roads. And it's dirty and it's dusty. And so you can imagine, after a day of walking around through the city streets and in the hills and over the roads, their feet are filthy. So put yourself in one of the disciples' shoes. Here is Jesus, whom you know to be the Messiah. You know to be the one anointed of God to come, who is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And even though they don't fully grasp it, they have this understanding that he is the Son of God. They don't fully grasp who it is standing before them, but they have at least a little bit of an understanding that this is the Son of God sitting before them. And what is he doing? He's taking on the identity of a servant. Not just a servant, but the lowest of the low, to serve them, to show them honor, to show them how much he values them. And he's doing it to set an example, to say, look, follow my lead. If I, as the absolute top authority, as the one at the height, the pinnacle, am doing this, there is no one who is too good to serve another. Not only that, there is nothing you can say that is too far beneath you. Jesus just didn't pick any task, he picked the lowest task to demonstrate, look, last week it was the Good Samaritan. There is no one I am too good to be a neighbor to show love and honor to. This week, there is no task too low that is too far beneath me for me to be able to serve. So I don't know what that looks like in your setting, in your context. Maybe it's, I've been thinking lately, what are some things that I feel like I'm too good to do, or that it's a waste of my time? And yet, we're called to serve. We're called to love others and love them deeply. We're called to honor others more than ourselves. And again, honor with the mindset of this is the outward expression of the inward value I have towards someone. So if I'm looking around me and I'm recognizing that the people around me, they're not just people, these are children. These are creations of God Almighty. These are ones that are carrying the image of our Creator. They are the image bearers of God. All men were created in the image of God, men and women. If I begin to think about that, and I begin to think about the fact that as I'm serving, what that means, the value they have, and how can I express that, whether it's in my words of encouragement or, even in correction, as I'm thinking about my children and I'm thinking about how I'm leading them and how I'm correcting them. I'm not correcting from the standpoint of I'm above them and they're beneath me. I'm correcting from the standpoint of they were created by the living God, the maker of heaven and earth. He loves them dearly. He created them in his image and for his purposes and the value that they have. Therefore, I want to protect them. I want to build them up. I want to lift them up and point them in the way they should go, to express to them the value that they have. That value doesn't come because of what they can do for me. That value doesn't come. So as we're coaching, as we're leading our teams, our athletes, their value isn't in what they bring to the team. It's not in the skills that they possess. It's not in the fact that they can make shots or pass or play defense really well. Their value is in the fact that they were created by the living God. Created with a purpose, created with a call, created with a plan. And the amazing thing is, basketball was part of that plan, and we get to encourage them in this skill, encourage them in this wonderful game that we have. So as you're going through your week, as you're continuing this theme of honor, I want you to keep this in mind. Remember that we're honoring others, we're showing value to others based on who they are, based on the identity that they have. As young men and women created in the image of God, who may or may not have a relationship with Him right now. And we have the privilege of walking them towards that, of leading them closer to a relationship with the living God, the one who came, who lived a perfect sinless life, who died a death on a cross that they might know Him. We have the privilege of working with the King of all kings, the Lord of all lords, and helping these kids come to an awareness of the value that they have because of who made them and what He made them for. So I hope that that's an encouragement to you guys this week. If you have questions, please feel free to pull me aside at the practices. I'm usually pretty busy in between the changeovers, but if you catch me towards the middle of a practice, I have more time to sit and chat and talk, and I'd love to hear how things are going with your team, see how I can be praying for you, how I can be encouraging the prayer team to be praying for you guys. Yeah, please let me know if you need anything or there's any way that I can serve you better. I'm just really so blessed to be able to be a part of this Upward Basketball League, and I hope that you guys are as well. I hope that you see the privilege that it is for us to be able to use sport, to use something that we love to glorify and honor our Creator, and to lead others into a deeper understanding of who He is. So yeah, be blessed this week. Know that I'm praying for you guys. Know that I am. My heart is with you guys, and I look forward to connecting more as the season goes on. Blessings.